Alright, hey everyone. Just want to make a quick demo video for my CS-290 web development portfolio project for winter 2023 with Professor Pam Van Londen. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, just want to start up my front and back ends. So I'm going to run my front end on port 8000, and then my back end will be running on port 3000. So looks like those are both good. So let's go ahead and get started. Refresh this page. Here's my app. Let's make me a little bit smaller as well. All right. Okay, so yeah, here's basically my single page application. There's actually several pages to this: home, blog, gallery, staff, cats, order page, and a contact form. I'll basically walk through each of these individually, just sort of starting with the home page first. This is basically overview or about page about the project. And so just sort of walking through this, we use the MERN stack, that's MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. We use that to create an SPA, which basically has a React front end, and then an Express app running for the back end. And for the back end, we basically created a RESTful API so that we could perform CRUD operations on collections of data, which are stored in MongoDB. And so I chose to do mine on cats, so we're going to manipulate some cat data momentarily. This basically provides some additional details. I've got an embedded video here, which I'll basically be replacing with this video once I finish recording it. And then I basically have a little diagram here just showing kind of our front end and back end, how those pieces fit together and interact with each other. So that's basically the home tab. We can go ahead and go to the blog card. And so this page is basically a collection of blog articles. You could basically cycle through these to look at basically different articles that we've been assigned over the course of the quarter. And so I thought this was kind of interesting, but this is actually our very first web page assignment that we made, just using very vanilla boilerplate HTML, and we're actually now up to this point. So I thought that was kind of cool to see. Anyways, so yeah, you can basically cycle through various articles that we've written. I don't have anything on Express, React, or MongoDB currently, but that's because all of those topics sort of were dumped on us at the very end, so maybe if I have a little more time, I'll go back and add those. On this page, I'm basically using the useEffect hook with React to basically choose which articles to render. So actually previously, I had all my blog articles just on one page, so it was like a really long, really monolithic article, and I was using this little ribbon bar here to use the hashtag bookmark to basically jump to those. But basically with React, if you use the useState hook, it's really easy to basically set the state of the active article that you're looking at, and in turn basically just render the active article. So it's a little bit more efficient. You can just render what needs to be rendered. So that's pretty cool. So that basically is the blog tab. We also have a gallery tab. These are basically just a bunch of photos that I've snapped of murals from around the city. Basically now, or previously I was rendering this using sort of a Flexbox layout and sort of a grid pattern, but now I'm just using this React image gallery library. Basically is just a little bit nicer for aggregating the photos. You can basically navigate around between these a little bit easier. So pretty straightforward stuff. Moving on to the staff page tab. This is now basically taking some data from a random person API and basically plotting it up here. And so I actually have two buttons here. They do the same thing, but the first button calls the random person API through the browser. The second one basically takes a slightly more convoluted step. It basically sends a request to our backend or an endpoint on our backend, and then our server makes the call for us, and then it sends the JSON back and gets parsed by the browser, and then updates the state, which in turn updates basically the data that gets shown here. So I can go ahead and call the browser tab. It should refresh our staff. Try that again. And then same thing, you could also use this other button. They basically do the same thing, just sort of getting new random person data. But if I pull up my backend console, you'll see here whenever I click the button, basically is pulling data from the backend. Okay, so now moving on to the more interesting stuff, our CATS tab. This is basically for performing CRUD operations by making asynchronous calls to the endpoints of our REST API. If you recall, we're using the MERN stack, so all of our data is being stored in a MongoDB database, and then we're basically using our backend Node Express app to basically interact with that data, and then in turn our front-end React application is basically interacting with our backend to get the data. So just to sort of walk you through, this is basically the web browser GUI for basically MongoDB running on Atlas. And so I have my CATS database here, and then you'll see here I basically have 8 entries, including Maximilian Decimus Meridius. And remember, I have my backend running on localhost 3000. So if I send a request to the CATS endpoint, I basically get 8 objects back, including Maximilian Decimus Meridius. And then in turn, on my React front end, if it makes a request to our backend, it also gets 8 entries back, including my cat, Maximus Decimus Meridius. And so I'll next basically walk through a couple of these various CRUD operations. So CRUD is create, read, update, delete. You've already seen the receive or retrieve portion, which is basically what you see here, just getting all the cats. So if we want to create a cat, we can actually click this add cat entry, and then basically we could populate these attribute fields, which are defined in the schema of our data model. So there are 3 required fields at minimum. Let's name our cat Bob. He's 11 years old, and let's just say he's a bobcat. And let's go ahead and add him. And you'll see here Bob is now, and we can sort of confirm that also by sending a new request to our REST API, and we can see here that Bob has been added. Oops, here's Bob. Okay, so for the next thing, the U is update in CRUD, and so if we want to, we can also edit Bob. So we can click here, and let's just suppose we want to give him a portrait. So I'll look for some bobcat photos. This one seems good. Copy image link. We'll go ahead and throw that in here. And since he's a bobcat, let's just say he's also a very good hunter, so he's caught quite a few birds and rodents. We'll save those edits. And as you can see here, Bob's your uncle. Bob now has a portrait, and his bird count and rodent count tallies have also been updated. And for the last operation, that's basically deleting an entry. So let's just say, Bob is not really a cat, he's a bobcat, so we can go ahead and remove him. And voila, Bob is no longer part of our database. And we could also check our REST API again, and you'll see here, Bob is basically nowhere to be found. So basically that's our CATS tab. Let's go ahead to the order page next. And so for this order page, what this is simulating, it's basically, picking some products that you want to purchase, and then, populating a form, and then sending that to an endpoint in our backend, and then that endpoint will further send some confirmation emails. So we can go ahead and say we want some spinning cat scratcher balls, some maybe foldable dog pools, some dog fence windows, let's say some travel backpacks. Hamster wheels sound pretty cool, and then maybe some noodle scratchers. And basically we have our total here, $45,000. That seems pretty reasonable, so let's go ahead and order it. I'll put in my name. I'm going to enter in my personal email because I want to get a confirmation email to that address. And then for these other fields, I'm just going to put some placeholders. Normally you would do form validation, but I'm just trying to keep this easy for the TAs for grading. We'll submit that order, and then we basically get our confirmation page here. It says, thanks Kevin, you'll receive a confirmation email shortly. There's our confirmation email with a total of 45,000. Just mark that as red. And then basically our order details, as you can see here. And we could basically go back to the order page to place a new order. Okay, so for the last tab, we also have a contact form. So kind of similar type deal. The difference with this one is, whereas the previous was sending a request to our backend to basically forward the email, this one actually just does it through our browser directly using the Mail.js API service. So I'll just enter in my name, kevinquay@gmail.com, and then let's say I want to fight one horse-sized duck, and for the message I'll say, hey buddy, nice website. Go ahead and send that. Okay, and so I can go ahead and kind of walk you through the emails next. As I mentioned, I'm using the SendInBlue API for the order page. And so if I take a look on the history here, I basically have two emails. One is a confirmation order. That's for the customer, which should get sent to kevinquay@gmail.com. So you'll see here, it basically has my order info details, right? Basically, who am I, what did I order, and where is it going to? And then there's a second email which gets sent to my Oregon State email address. This is basically all the order details, and so it'll have stuff like the payment info included as well. And if I want to confirm the contact email message as well, so those are those two emails that I was talking about. Yeah, so here's the comment that I sent myself. Hey buddy, nice website, right? And then here's the order page info details. So we got both of those. And then the customer also gets a confirmation order, and that's basically this email here for $45,000. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything for this React app. The only other thing that I also added was sort of this ribbon, basically redirects to some external links. I just kind of added my LinkedIn profile, my GitHub profile, and then my Twitter sort of as a shameless plug. So yeah, that pretty much summarizes this app. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was quite interesting to work on this project. Still a lot I don't know, but I definitely feel like it took the fear out of Googling for a lot of these things. So yeah, all right, take care, bye.